5 or 6% of it. We're just looking at the math here, but they could block that. Do you think they would?
Well, you know,
Welcome back to the Jim Bohannon Show at 1-866-50-JIMBO, 1-866-505-4626. And I believe we have established not only a return of our phones, but of the presence of Ambassador James Gilmore. Is that correct?
I'm here.
Very good, Jim. Glad to have you with us. He is, of course, former governor of Virginia, in addition to which also a former U.S. ambassador to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. And for those who are not familiar with that group, what is the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe?
Well, it's an international organization that meets every week in Vienna, Austria, downtown in the Hofburg Palace. It's got 57 countries in it, including the United States and Canada, but everybody in Europe, including all the countries of Europe, the Balkans, the Baltics, Russia, Ukraine, and even goes out into Central Asia. But it's a focus group that came into being after the Helsinki Accords in 1976 for the purpose of trying to maintain democracy, peace, human rights in Europe. And Russia is a member of it. And so
Russia is a member of it?
Yes, indeed. Russia is a full member of it. They participate a great deal. When I was there, I had a very cordial relationship with the Russian ambassador, even though we didn't agree with what his country was trying to do.
And now that was that period was 2019 to 2021, that is to say very recently. Did the subject of Ukraine ever come up?
Constantly, every week. Because the Ukraine ambassador, of course, was also in the meeting of the 57 ambassadors, and he was constantly raising hell about the Russians occupying part of his country. So the OSCE and the ambassadors in OSCE never, ever agreed that Crimea was properly annexed, never. And of course, they also didn't like the idea that the Russians had set up fake governments in eastern Ukraine down there, and Donetsk, Donbass down there. So we were constantly fighting about it. The United States was constantly supporting Ukraine as well as our better allies, but we were working very well together, I think, in OSCE.
Well, now, we of course, have outlined here, but it's worth reviewing with you the agreement that originally, when the Soviet Union fell apart, there was an agreement that out of all the constituent pieces of the old Soviet Union, only the Russian Federation, the biggest chunk of the Soviet Union, would remain a nuclear power. Well, there were a lot of nukes in Ukraine when it was part of the Soviet Union. 1900 is the figure I've always seen, but in any event, the agreement was that Ukraine would hand over those nukes in exchange for guarantees of its territorial integrity signed by, at the time, U.S. President Bill Clinton, the British Prime Minister at the time, Tony Blair, the leader of Russia, which I assume was Boris Yeltsin, and whoever was leading Ukraine at that time. And we, of course, since have learned that unless you sign a deal with the United States that involves a formal treaty, like NATO, for example, our word doesn't seem to mean a whole lot, Mr. Ambassador.
Well, I'll tell you, nobody talked about that Budapest Memorandum very much in Vienna, and it's a very important consideration. There was a very different Russia at that time. The U.S. and Russia were in agreement that we didn't want the new country of Ukraine to have proliferated nuclear weapons. But the understanding was that the United Kingdom, the United States, and Russia would all guarantee the sovereignty of Ukraine. If they gave up their nukes and basically went bare, then at that point they would have guarantees as to their independence and sovereignty. Now Russia is violating that Budapest Memorandum, so as a result of that, it's now come under much more discussion, and we've reminded people, the Russian, of their obligations.
Of course, they did that in 2014 with Crimea, so that deal lasted 23 years. But I mean, it's already now 2014 to 2022. That's been 8 years since Crimea went, and now, of course, we got 2 more slices. It's like you're not going to eat that whole ham in the refrigerator. No, we're going to eat it slice at a time. That's what it certainly looks like. Now, I was noting something that I'll talk about it with you when we come back. We'll take a quick break. But it was an exchange between Vladimir Putin and the head of his foreign intelligence during a news conference, which made it sound as though these two breakaway provinces to the Far East are no longer the only goals here. And we'll come back and do that with our guest, Ambassador Jim Gilmore, to the former ambassador to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. 1-866-50-JIMBO, our number, and the phones do appear to be working now, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Like getting credit for everything you do? We created 102 reasons to switch to a Jackson Hewitt Tax Pro this year. The first 100 reasons, you'll get $100 to switch. Yep, $100. Reason 101, we'll track down every last tax credit so you get every dollar you deserve. 102, we guarantee your biggest refund. Want to discover reason 103? Book an appointment at a participating location near you and get credit for everything you do. Offer ends March 6th. Available at participating retail locations for new clients only. Mention this ad when filing. Terms apply. Visit jacksonhewitt.com for details.
Dell Technologies President's Day Business Day